The Subcommittee on the Middle East and North Africa will come to order. The purpose of this hearing is to assess the budgetary posture and strategic direction of the State Department's Bureau of Counterterrorism for fiscal year 2026. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Today, we convene to conduct oversight of the State Department's Bureau of Counterterrorism and review its budgetary posture and strategic priorities for fiscal year 2026. I want to thank our witness, Acting Coordinator for Counterterrorism, Gregory LoGerfo, for appearing before us today. The Bureau of Counterterrorism is a vital arm of America's national security strategy. It plays a leading role in coordinating U.S. counterterrorism policy, engaging foreign partners to disrupt threats before they reach our shores, and supporting global efforts to confront terrorism in all its forms. From its role in special operations to diplomatic engagement to training programs, the Bureau is on the front lines of protecting the American people. As terrorism threats are becoming more diffuse, adaptive, and globally networked, we must ensure the Bureau is equipped to respond with agility, efficiency, and strategic foresight. In the Middle East, this means confronting the malign influence of Iran-backed proxy groups such as Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, while sustaining pressure on ISIS, whose presence in the region remains a serious concern. And it is with this background that we examine the Bureau of Counterterrorism's budget. During this hearing today, we'll assess how the Bureau is delivering measurable security dividends for U.S. taxpayers through its foreign assistance programming, particularly through its anti-terrorism assistance and the Worldwide Security Program. We will also explore the extent to which the Bureau's budget requests will enable personnel to adapt to new geopolitical threats while maintaining coordination across the interagency and international partners. We must also consider whether the State Department's reorganization has impacted outcomes and how the Bureau is responding to its expanded scope. We must determine if the State Department has the tools, authorities, and structure to preserve its capacity to respond to regional complexities. Finally, I want to emphasize that the effective counterterrorism policy demands a strong partnership between Congress and the Department that is grounded in transparency, oversight, and shared strategic vision. As we move toward reauthorization and review of the Department's fiscal year 2026 plan, this subcommittee is committed to ensuring that the Bureau of Counterterrorism has the resources and guidance it needs to remain a global leader in combating our world's most dangerous threats. Mr. LoGerfo, we look forward to your testimony and to a robust discussion of how we can work together to safeguard the United States and our allies in an increasingly complex threat environment. With that, I now recognize the ranking member from Florida, Congresswoman Sheila Sherfurlis-McCormick, for 5 minutes for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for convening today's hearing on the State Department's Bureau of Counterterrorism. I want to thank Acting Coordinator LoGerfo for being here today and for your many years of public service. For decades, the State Department CT Bureau has worked hand in hand with our allies and partners to disrupt terrorist networks, prevent radicalization, and support the capacity of governments around the world to do the same. It is through this vital work that we have built the international coalition, expertise, and tools that help keep Americans safe around the world. Yet this administration has chosen to gut it all. On July 11th, the Trump administration issued RIFs orders to over 1,300 State Department employees. This included numerous CT experts across the department. Among those fired was the entire team working on the Counter-Violent Extremists, or CVE. This office worked on preventing radicalization before it took hold. Today's global terrorist threats remain significant, and we need the best people working on the mitigation and prevention work. This administration also gutted the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, known as PRM. For decades, PRM has supported refugees and provided humanitarian assistance around the world, helping to alleviate conflict, displacement, and poverty that terrorist groups exploit. The administration didn't stop there. It also gutted the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor, and the vast majority of the department's programs aimed at protecting the rights of individuals who are marginalized and may feel they have no other choice than to turn to extremism to redress their grievances. Then there's the dismantling of USAID, an agency that for decades worked in some of the world's most volatile regions to provide life-saving assistance and build livelihoods. This administration's promise of life-saving assistance would continue. Just weeks later, The Atlantic reported that the administration ordered over 500 metric tons of emergency food to be incinerated rather than delivering it to the starving populations who need it. How do we think that headline plays with the terrorist groups seeking to recruit the most vulnerable? Compare that to from the American people. The administration's inability to grasp, let alone appropriate respond to counterterrorism, needs is also apparent in the FY26 budget request. For example, the budget request makes no mention of Yemen anywhere, despite the significant threats posed by Houthi rebels. In fact, the Trump administration cuts funds to Yemen, including food assistance, when over 17 million people in Yemen are food insecure. As they cut programs and offices working to address the root causes of extremes, it is clear that this administration lacks the foresight, focus, and common sense necessary to combat terrorism effectively. I am far less concerned about how your organization chart looks than about your workforce being ready, staffed, and trained to complete its mission with experts. We have to remember that what is at stake here. This is about our national security and protecting American interests and the American people from terrorists and violent extremists. We must address these threats with clear eyes and effective policy. Effective CT workers cannot succeed with political motivated purges, baseless budgets, and foreign assistant cuts, and an empty toolbox. Mr. LoGerfo, I look forward to your testimony and to your understanding on how these conditions will better the Bureau and help it get to its mission. Thank you so much for being here. I yield back.
I thank the ranking member for her statement. Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. We are pleased to have the acting coordinator for counterterrorism, Gregory LoGerfo, before us today. Your full statements will be made part of the record, and I'll ask that you keep your spoken remarks to 5 minutes in order to allow time for member questions. I now recognize Mr. LoGerfo for an opening statement.
Chairman Lawler, Ranking Member Sherfilis McCormick, members of this esteemed subcommittee, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me today to testify on how the State Department's Counterterrorism Bureau is addressing counterterrorism threats, supporting key diplomatic initiatives, and coordinating across the department and within the interagency. The Trump administration is committed to preventing a major attack on the homeland and has made tremendous progress in advancing safety and security at home and abroad by implementing peace through strength. Our focus is on destroying and disrupting terrorist networks, holding state sponsors accountable, securing our borders, and degrading the capacity of terrorist groups to threaten the United States. The Trump administration's approach to counterterrorism also recognizes that America first does not mean America alone. We have strong counterterrorism partnerships across the globe with a focus on proper burden sharing from partners with shared security interests. When we face shared threats, we should naturally share burden. The terrorist threats we face today are dramatically different than what we faced following the September 11th, 2001 attacks. Today, motivations driving terrorism are varied and often hard to define. In addition to violent Salafism, anti-Semitism and anti-government animus are major factors in today's threat environment. ISIS and al-Qaeda continue to inspire their followers across the globe to conduct attacks in their home countries, including the United States and across Europe. The New Year's Day attack in New Orleans, which killed 14 and injured many others, was a stark reminder of ISIS' reach. In addition, although Iran has been greatly weakened, Tehran and its terrorist proxies, including the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas, continue to destabilize the Middle East and beyond. Other jihadist groups, such as the South and Central Asia-based ISIS Khorasan network, continues to be a part of the global jihadi network. Terrorist activity presents a rising threat in our hemisphere. Transnational cartels and gangs, such as those in Mexico and Venezuela, devastate their communities and present a direct threat to U.S. security. The Trump administration is clear-eyed and focused on identifying these threats and using all means necessary to eliminate them. The administration has used military tools decisively, when necessary, against terrorist groups threatening the United States. This includes successful strikes against ISIS Somalia leaders, against ISIS second-in-command in Iraq, and several significant figures of Haras al-Din, al-Qaeda's branch in Syria. Consistent with our congressional mandate, the Department's Counterterrorism Bureau plays a critical role in developing, implementing, and coordinating the administration's counterterrorism approach. To tackle terrorist travel before violent actors reach our borders, we work with countries to bolster their visa regimes, expand information sharing on travelers of concern so that we can enhance our terrorist watch list, and strengthen border screening systems and practices to detect and deter illegal migration and terrorist travel. Our designations authorities allow us to cut off resources to dangerous groups. Secretary Rubio has designated 10 cartels and gangs in the Western Hemisphere as terrorist organizations, giving our law enforcement partners new authorities and tools to address those dangerous threats. We are pleased to see Canada and numerous Latin American and Caribbean partners designate the Venezuelan-based transnational cartel Tren de Aragua as a terrorist organization. Pursuant to the President's executive order of June 30th on Syria, the Secretary revoked the foreign terror organization designation of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, and the administration removed other sanctions to facilitate a prosperous and peaceful Syria. We will remain laser-focused to ensure that ISIS does not reemerge to threaten U.S. interests and that Iran does not destabilize the new Syrian government through its terrorist proxies. We will continue to ensure the ISIS detention facilities and displaced person camps in northeast Syria do not pose a threat to the United States or our partners. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity to testify today on this important topic, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. LoGerfo. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Through the reorganization of the Bureau of Counterterrorism outside of the regional bureaus and under the Undersecretary for International Security, have there been any changes to the Bureau's core mission and functions?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. Our ability to carry forward the counterterrorism mission of the Bureau at the State Department is absolutely intact and is moving forward. We have all the authorities and all the resources that we need to advance the President's agenda to keep America safe and secure. The move into the Undersecretary for Security, the T family, if you will allow us to work together with partners in the department who share similar funding streams and to make sure that we complement rather than overlap on key functions.
So to that end, what new policy tools or structural advantages has the Bureau gained through this move, and how is CT leveraging its new placement to drive integrated responses to global terrorism?
We have our statutory responsibility, Mr. Chairman, to coordinate in the department, in the agency, in the interagency, and also with diplomacy with our partners overseas. All of that remains, as well as our capacity to recommend designations for foreign terror organizations when appropriate, as we have very assertively in this administration with over 10 foreign terror organizations designated since January 20th. Again, all of those functions remain intact and actually are, I think, enhanced. Going back to where we are in the Undersecretary for Security, the T family, if you will, we have, again, the opportunity to be a lot more strategic in how we allocate resources and taxpayer dollars, working with our bureaus from the political military family, also INL, the Narcotics and Law Enforcement Bureau, as well as those in non-proliferation. Oftentimes when we're working on terrorist issues in a given country, all of those bureaus have interests or funding streams, and we've started our staff meetings. We're consulting daily in a way that we haven't done previously, and I can tell you it's already made a big difference.
Does the Bureau of Counterterrorism have sufficient budgetary flexibility within NATO accounts to respond quickly to new threats, such as the emergence of new terrorist networks or cyber-linked financing schemes?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman, and I believe that the streamlining of the reorganization will help us to think more strategically and to act with a greater focus on our core mission to keep America safe.
Following up, would additional reprogramming authorities or surge mechanisms help the Bureau respond to unanticipated threats in fiscal year 26 and beyond?
Mr. Chairman, I would take that back to my colleagues at the department. I believe that our resources and our authorities are sufficient at this time, but welcome any feedback or proposals you or the committee may have.
Thank you. Can you elaborate on how robust funding for the Bureau of Counterterrorism helps generate goodwill from partner governments on other U.S. priorities?
Absolutely, that's a great question. For example, with the Philippines, an area of the world where there's a lot of strategic competition, we have a vigorous and comprehensive counterterrorism program with the Philippine government to address terrorist threats in that country. And that, in turn, builds trust, of course, because we're effective on that, and we have a broader set of strategic equities with the Philippine government that our effectiveness and our partnership on shared interests helps to advance.
And can you share how the Bureau leverages programmatic funding to encourage counterterrorism burden sharing and broader foreign policy alignment?
Absolutely. Last month, I was in Madrid to lead our delegation to the Defeat ISIS Coalition political directors meeting. We had about 30 members of the Defeat ISIS Coalition there at an event hosted by the Spanish government. We talked a lot about Syria, which I know is a very important issue for this committee, certainly for the administration. We talked about burden sharing in terms of maintaining the camps for displaced persons in northeast Syria. And we've made a lot of progress with respect to that from our European counterparts, including in Germany and the United Kingdom and France. We've emphasized, under the President's direction, that sharing risk means sharing burden, and that also America First does not mean America alone. And our partnerships are based on mutual interest, but also that we make sure that our partners understand they must bring resources to the table.
Last question. With new funding, how will CT Bureau determine priority regions or countries for counterterrorism programs and broader engagement?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have an annual strategic exercise in September where the Bureau reviews the resources that have been allocated to us and the strategic priorities of the administration. And in the case of the upcoming year, I expect us to focus heavily on Central Asia because of ISIS Khorasan and the threat that ISIS Khorasan continues to pose to the United States and our partners in the region as well as in Europe, Iran and its terrorist proxies, and West Africa, as well as the Western Hemisphere, given our new focus and aggressive focus on addressing the terror wrought by cartels.
Appreciate it. My time has expired. I now recognize Representative Sherman for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Well, perhaps one of the most vivid examples of terrorism was on October 7th. We're all familiar with Hamas, and one of its partners is Islamic Jihad. The third largest terrorist organization in Gaza was the Popular Resistance Committees, who fully participated in the terrorist attacks of October 7th. For example, the Popular Resistance Committees released a propaganda video showing a severely injured civilian, Ohad Yamali, who the group took hostage on October 7th and who tragically died in captivity. Now, these popular resistance committees were formed during the Second Intifada. They've been involved in bombings of U.S. diplomatic convoy traveling to meet Palestinian Fulbright candidates and for killing 3 Americans. And yet with all that, the popular resistance committees of Gaza have yet to be designated as a terrorist organization. Last Congress, this committee, the full committee, unanimously passed my legislation to finally sanction this group. Can you commit to designating the popular resistance committees of Gaza as either a foreign terrorist organization or a specially designated global terrorist?
Congressman Sherman, thank you for your question, and thank you for your support of the administration on addressing the scourge of terrorism in the Middle East, and in particular with respect to Hamas and the terror it has wrought since October 7th, 2023. With respect to the Popular Resistance Committee, the department is committed to reviewing the Popular Resistance Committee in Gaza for a potential terrorist designation. As with all sanctions, we review all source information, including engaging with our foreign partners to assess what is credible, sound evidence to demonstrate that the organization meets the statutory
How soon
criteria.
can we count on that review being done? They've been a terrorist organization for a couple decades now. Your predecessors have just not focused on this. Can you get back to us in a month?
I commit to getting back to you as soon as possible, Congressman Sherman. The Secretary is fully committed to taking appropriate steps against foreign groups, and I take
know
your
how
point.
committed you are, and I look forward to hearing from you within a month. We've seen the Voice of America and the Agency for Global Media gutted by this administration. The effect of that is to seed the war for public opinion and hearts and minds to some of the worst extremist terrorist groups in the world. Now, the 9/11 Commission, and I was here for that back then, said that if we're going to deal with terrorism, we have to not only advance development and good governance and opportunity, but that we have to reach out to communities around the world with the truth. Does it undermine your efforts to stop terrorism around the world that the terrorists put out their propaganda and the truth spigot has been turned off?
Thank you, Congressman Sherman. I am fully confident that the administration and that our Bureau of Counterterrorism has the resources it needs to advance the President's mission of keeping America safe and secure, and to working with partners and building partnerships around the world to prevent terrorist attacks against the United States.
Not just concerned about the terrorism that happens under your watch. The propagandized teenagers of today will be the terrorists of tomorrow. This administration will be gone. Some of us will be gone. What are you doing to make sure that the 12 and 14-year-olds of today are not the terrorists of a decade from now? And in particular, does it make sense to cede the entire communication system to the terrorist propaganda?
Congressman Sherman, we're not ceding any.
Well, when you completely eliminate public broadcasting and communications, you can sit in Washington and think you're doing something, but if you're not communicating with the places where future terrorists might live, you've ceded the ground.
We think that freedom of press and a free media is the best way to communicate and counter.
Sir, if I can interrupt. There's a lot of places where there is no free media. There is no free media in Iran, and you stop broadcasting in Farsi. So if you think that the private sector is going to get truth to the 12 and 15 and 20-year-olds in living in places where there is no free press, you simply don't understand the listening-ship opportunities of people in Iran and other places.
Is there a question?
what are we going to do to make sure that those who live in countries where there is no free press hear the truth? Or won't they become terrorists when they hear the lies of the terrorist organizations?
We continue to advance partnerships around the world, and we continue to support free press, not just from our country, but from around the world, including in Europe. Those messages get through to people all over the world, Congressman, and including to places where our adversaries or people who attempt to stifle freedom of speech. And history has shown that. Certainly history has shown that in the Cold War we were able to get through. And I understand what you're saying, Mr. Congressman Sherman, about the government apparatus, if I may.
History shows us the need for broadcasting. The Berlin Wall came down because of Radio Free Europe as much as anything, and I yield back.
Mr. Sherman, Congressman Sherman, the issue is whether or not the people can hear the message. And we believe that people will hear the message from the Trump administration. People will hear the message from a free media that has freedom of speech to communicate the values that matter to address violent extremism.
The gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize Representative Kane for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. LoGerfo, for being here today. As Congress systematically reviews the work that's being accomplished at the State Department, I want to speak with you about the important work that the department is doing to counter terrorism around the globe. I am encouraged to hear about the restructuring of the Bureau of Counterterrorism under the new international security family. This rightly reflects the important role of your Bureau in ensuring international efforts are aligned in countering terrorism. In light of recent terror activity from both Hamas and Hezbollah, can you discuss how this new structure will strengthen America's efforts to counter terrorism in the Middle East?
Thank you, Congressman Keene, for your question. We are fully confident that the restructuring, the streamlining of the Bureau of Counterterrorism, as well as the State Department broadly, will enable us to address issues on a strategic level with more proper deliberation, and also in the event of a tactical situation where we need to respond quickly, we'll be able to do so in a way that safeguards American interests. The other thing I just want to say is that the administration's counterterrorism team from the State Department, also at the White House with Dr. Gorka, and with our colleagues at the Department of Defense, Treasury, and the entire interagency in this administration is absolutely first rate. We're off to a very strong start. I think the reorganization is going to empower us to advance America's interests in keeping the country safer and secure.
And what mechanisms does the CT Bureau use to partner with America's allies in the Middle East and around the world to combat terrorism?
We have a variety of fora. I mentioned the Defeat ISIS Coalition, which is a forum that the Counterterrorism Bureau, as a matter of diplomacy, engages, takes the leadership role in engaging. We also have the Law Enforcement Coordination Group and a variety of other venues where we engage partners in the Middle East region, but also our European partners, or I would say like-minded partners, where we have shared interests and we're willing to share a burden in confronting terrorist threats. We've engaged, in particular in the Western Hemisphere, in confronting Hamas and Hezbollah and the IRGC. One of our diplomatic efforts yielded results a couple months ago when Paraguay designated the IRGC as a terrorist organization. It's that kind of diplomacy that the CT Bureau leads and that is effectively countering Iran and its terrorist proxies.
And terrorist attacks are increasingly taking digital form through cyber terrorism. Can you discuss how the CT Bureau is addressing this increasingly prevalent form of terrorism and what steps Congress can take to support this?
That's a great question, Congressman, and it relates back to the wisdom to move the Counterterrorism Bureau into the Undersecretariat for Security, where colleagues alongside the Bureau of Counterterrorism will be able to get at emerging technology, emerging threats, things that 20 years ago we weren't focused on drones. We are now, but of course there's other technology that's developing, as you mentioned, and we'll be able to do that in the Security Bureau, the T family of bureaus, to get at that and stay ahead of it instead of be reactive to new technology that may be behind a terrorist attack.
And undersea cable infrastructure has increasingly become a target of terrorist attacks and by other bad actors. How is the CT Bureau ensuring important undersea cable infrastructure is protected?
Congressman, we have a coordinating role pursuant to our statute, and we work with the interagency. That includes the Department of Defense and the Coast Guard, other agencies that have the technical and operational capacity to confront those threats. We also work with the intelligence community, and in our coordinating function, we are able to observe and help the interagency respond to threats that globally, and that would include the potential threats you're identifying.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. LoGerfo, and I yield back.
Thank you, Representative Kane. I now recognize Representative Schneider for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. LoGerfo. Let me just start by thanking you for your service. How long have you been with the State Department?
25 years, sir.
So it's a long time, and I'm just looking at the long list of awards you've received, and you and so many others who have committed their careers to protecting our country, advancing our interests, and keeping Americans safe around the world. We all owe a great debt to you and everyone else who has worked in that department. In the last 25 years, which is really the 21st century, we're a quarter of the way through, the threat risk, getting worse, getting better, staying the same? How would you overall rate it?
Congressman, thank you for your kind words. And with respect to the threats today, I would say just different. The threats that we faced on September 11th, 2001, obviously a day that changed the course of American and world history. The threats that we're looking at today, there is still, of course, the global jihadi network, but there's other threats. There's a rise of anti-Semitism, for example. There's also, just in the way that attacks are carried out, if you look at what happened in New Orleans, it's not as if always there's a command and control element to someone who's carried out an attack, but there's inspiration. That inspiration often comes from the internet, often comes from some kind of a chat room, and understanding that, while we also are, of course, mindful of freedom of speech and freedom of expression and not losing our values there,
Right.
making sure we can get at that is
And
really the
I
crux of it.
apologize, I'm going to retake my time just because we have so much to talk about, but I think you're right. It was a dangerous world when you started. It's a dangerous world today. The threats are constantly changing. The Bureau of Counterterrorism exists because we learned the hard way what happens when we leave coordination to chance. We created the structure to ensure that someone, somewhere, had the clear mandate to prevent the next attack before it happens. The mission is not theoretical, it's very real. It's not regional, it's global, and it's not optional. It is essential. I find it alarming and frankly revealing that the Trump administration is moving with such speed to dismantle the Bureau's independence, gut its capacity, and fold its responsibilities into regional desks that are already overstretched. In the name of reform and modernization, the administration is dismantling capabilities and shirking responsibilities. There's no real vision, no real strategy, and as I see it, there is no real plan for success. Your Bureau provides the connective tissues across our national security agencies, between the State Department, the IC, DHS, Treasury, and our partners around the world. When a terrorist plot emerges in West Africa, but the funding traces back to the Gulf or Central Asia, and the online radicalization was happening in Europe, who and how do we connect those dots? Who and how do we coordinate the U.S. response across the region's tools and timelines? A big part of that is INR, but the Bureau, your Bureau, also has a central role to play. I want to say this as bluntly as I can. This administration is not behaving like it takes the threat of terrorism seriously. Dismantling our counterterrorism architecture during a moment of resurgent radicalization and clear threats to the homeland around the world, and as you noted, including at home, is an act of strategic negligence. Mr. LoGerfo, I don't doubt your commitment. I am grateful for your service. But leadership in a moment like this requires more than presence. It requires pushback. It requires telling the truth up the chain, even when it's inconvenient. So I want to hear not just how you'll implement whatever structure you're given. I want to hear whether you believe that structure serves the mission and whether you're willing to fight for it. We cannot let institutional memory be erased. We cannot allow the strategic capacity of the United States government to be hollowed out behind closed doors when we pretend everything is just proceeding like normal. So, Mr. LoGerfo, I threw a lot at you, but I would love to hear your thoughts and response.
Thank you, Congressman. I am fully confident that the restructure, we went from a height of 14 offices in the Bureau of Counterterrorism. We've restructured to make things move more quickly, to move at the speed of relevance, and also, again, as a matter of tactical response, we are going to be in a position working alongside our regional bureaus, absolutely, and working within the T family, the Undersecretariat for Security Policy, to respond quickly and also to fulfill our coordinating role as provided in statute within the interagency, with our diplomatic partners, to keep America safe and secure.
I'm out of time, but I will follow up with written questions because I want to understand examples, specific examples, how we've strengthened capacities rather than reduced or eliminated capacities and capabilities. Mr. Sherman talked about a perfect example, losing the ability to communicate in country where the message is all going to be from bad regimes like Iran. We've lost our voice and ability to counter. As they develop young people who are going to be the terrorists of tomorrow, we need to be working and fighting hard every single day to develop those who are going to be the leaders of tomorrow that bring countries like Iran into the family of nations and create a more peaceful and prosperous future for us all. I yield back.
I thank the representative from Illinois. I now recognize myself for a second round of questioning. Mr. LoGerfo, how does CT coordinate with other agencies and embassies to ensure its diplomatic and programming efforts complement U.S. efforts on great power competition, particularly in regions where China, Russia, or Iran may seek influence under the guise of counterterrorism support? And how does the budget request reflect this responsibility to carry out this mission?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. We have comprehensive interagency coordination. I would say since January 20th, the strategic deliberation and the review of CT counterterrorism or of terrorism hotspots around the world has been accelerated, deliberate, and proper. We work with the intelligence community in our coordinating capacity, also with the Department of Defense, combatant commanders, of course, within the Department of State. We work with the regional bureaus, and we work with other security-related bureaus to make sure we're postured to address counterterrorism threats, or terrorism threats. And the other thing, to answer your question, with respect to Asia, we are 100% in sync with our Asia Bureau, with other colleagues across the interagency to make sure the relationship between terrorist threats and security threats and our partnerships in Asia is 100% synchronized. I've led diplomatic representation to the Quad with Australia and Japan and India. Those are partners in the region that have shared security interests, and that's just one example of diplomatic engagements that we have to secure our strategic objectives in the Indo-Pacific region with respect to security and counterterrorism.
The CT Bureau receives $1.6 million from the Worldwide Security Protection Account in fiscal year 26. Given the Bureau's responsibilities, do you believe that is sufficient to support surge operations, special events, and training?
I do believe our overall budget request is proper. I will, with respect to your specific question, I'm confident that it is, but I will get back to you with more specific information.
Okay. With various functional bureaus addressing counterterrorism adjacent issues like cybersecurity, proliferation, and irregular warfare, how is CT's budget and programming deconflicted from those of other offices? And is there a need for new legislative direction or internal budgetary coordination mechanisms to prevent redundancy?
Thank you. Absolutely. And again, going back to it, the reorganization provides us the best opportunity to eliminate unnecessary overlap and duplication of effort with, for example, our Narcotics and Law Enforcement Bureau, our Political Military Affairs Bureau, and other bureaus in the Undersecretariat of Security Policy. And we are off to a very good start in the past couple of weeks with looking at a given country and saying, okay, you've got funding for this issue, and we've got funding for a very similar issue, and deconflicting. It's in real time now, and it's something that I'm very confident will yield better results for the taxpayer and better results for the administration's priorities of keeping America safe and secure.
Appreciate it. I yield the remainder of my time. I now recognize Representative Schneider for a second round of questioning for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll pick up a little bit from where we were. Go back to 9/11. It's hard to believe it is coming up on 24 years, but 25 years ago. The assessment after 9/11 was the IC's and others' inability to connect the dots, and I'm not casting aspersions. We just didn't connect the dots. The conclusion following 9/11 is that we needed to create the connective tissue, if you will, so that when a dot identified by one group over here and a separate unrelated dot over here picked up, that somewhere, somehow, we're bringing those together to say, wait, there's something there. Let me also clarify, or be very clear, there is always room for improvement to realign, reassess, to make sure organizations are best structured, best positioned to tackle the challenges of today, not designed for what we were facing a decade or a quarter century ago. I get all that. My concern in a loss of a central hub like yours, what do we lose? How do we accelerate the connection of dots? What do we risk in losing the ability to connect the dots with the approach that's being taken?
I think our ability to fulfill our statutory responsibilities to coordinate with respect to counterterrorism in the State Department, in the interagency, and with our diplomatic partners is enhanced by the reorganization.
Help me understand how.
Because we have clarity of thought, we have focus on counterterrorism priorities that matter to America and the American people. We did a very thorough, I welcomed the assistance review, I welcomed the reorganization. We had going back to September 11th, our bureau at that time was less than half the size it is today. And I just want to say, extraordinary respect and gratitude for all of my colleagues, including those who were affected by the reorganization. Good leadership makes tough decisions on how to move forward. The size of the bureau, we weren't even a bureau back then, the Counterterrorism Bureau was an advisor to the Secretary. It was less than half the size we are today as a matter of personnel. We had a reorganization where we actually moved a lot of our colleagues to the regional bureaus, and that's a strategic organizational move. They're still CT advisors. They're still going to work on CT. It actually will increase the connectivity between bureaus, and it'll increase the overall result of the reorg, will increase our tactical effectiveness because we'll have clarity of thought, we'll have fewer layers, and we'll be able to coordinate quickly within the interagency to respond to threats as they face the United States. It also allows us to spend more deliberative time with strategic planning, looking ahead, working with the Undersecretary for Security Affairs, going back to the question from Congressman Keene about potential threats from new technology. All of this is now on the table, and I'm very confident we'll be able to move forward in the right way.
Where I'm still struggling is, I'll use an example, a threat to the homeland emanating from actors in South America, funded by Iran, radicalized in Brussels. If you have regional authorities looking at various things, how do we make sure that the connective tissue between all of those is identified before that action emanating from South America strikes, whether it's in Florida or Washington State?
Congressman, we still have absolute vigorous, strong embassies all around the world. We have an interagency that is focused, not just the Counterterrorism Bureau and our coordination role, but we have a very strong posture on counterterrorism, led by the president, led by the administration to keep America safe. And in the example that you pose, the hypothetical example that you pose, we have all the tools in place. And in fact, I'm confident that we'll be able to move quicker, more assertively, and more decisively in facing threats as they come to the United States.
To the extent you can, I know we're an open forum, how that information from Europe to Iran to Latin America to Seattle, just picking those sites. We don't have any information on that, just to be clear. How would that information be elevated and escalated to make sure that everything was in place and necessary to first prevent the threat from being an action, and then undermining, undercutting, and holding to account all those involved in that threat?
Well, Congressman, we'd have, the lines of communication are still exactly as they were. And we have the Counterterrorism Bureau. We have direct access, of course, reporting upward to Secretary Rubio and his team. We have a counterterrorism interagency that meets regular and can meet in an instant to review and assess threats. And actually, again, when we're getting back to core interests of keeping America safe, the Counterterrorism Bureau, with the current layout of our resources and our staffing pattern, in this case, is better postured than ever before.
I appreciate the extra time. I'm still struggling to understand where we've cut capabilities, we've lost expertise, we've reduced those connections, how it works, but we'll continue talking about it. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. Mr. LoGerfo, I just want to follow up on something. How does the Bureau distinguish between hard security initiatives and root causes programs when deciding where to allocate taxpayer resources?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question. It's a great question. We have an annual strategic exercise in September where we look at the administration's priorities and we look at the resources that have been allocated by Congress, and we make sure that the resources and the staffing that we have are in concert with the administration's priorities. And that's something that we do every year. It's yielded very good results, and that will certainly continue as we go forward.
Great. I thank you. I now want to recognize my colleague, the ranking member, Representative Sherfilis McCormick, for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. LoGerfo. I don't want to doubt your commitment to the organization, but leadership in the moment like this requires more than presence. It requires pushback. It requires telling the truth and standing up. What we're looking at right now, we're looking for more details. And so I want to hear not just that you'll implement whatever structure you've been given, I want to hear whether you believe that this structure serves the mission and whether you're willing to fight for it. We cannot let institutions' memory be erased. We cannot allow the strategic capacity of the United States government to be hollowed out behind closed doors while we pretend everything is proceeding as normal. Mr. LoGerfo, what is lost when counterterrorism coordination is split across multiple regional bureaus without a central hub like yours?
Thank you, Madam Ranking Member, for the question. We are fully confident that the structure that we have in place following the reorganization will enable us to coordinate properly on counterterrorism issues to keep America safe and secure. And I don't believe that we have bled out talent in any way. In fact, we have moved talent from our bureau, the Counterterrorism Bureau, into other bureaus so that we have counterterrorism advisor expertise in the regional bureaus, and these are our colleagues. We communicate every day. And at the same time, we have the benefit of being in the Undersecretariat for Security Policy, the T family, if you will, which is an enhancement. So I'm very confident that we'll be able to pursue the core mission of the administration's policies and to keep America safe and secure, and the statutory functions of coordination on counterterrorism that we have.
Well, I want to switch focus and look at Syria. In May, on his visit to Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states, President Trump announced he was going to lift U.S. sanctions on Syria following the fall of the Assad regime. He said this decision was part of his effort to give them a chance at greatness. I have some questions related to the administration's policy on this issue, as I believe it is crucial to our CT and stabilization work in the Middle East. During a recent trip to the region, the importance of supporting Saudi Arabia at this moment of great transition, an opportunity was expressed in almost every meeting. Do you agree with President Trump that Syria deserves a chance at greatness?
Thank you. On May 13th, 2025, as you mentioned, the United States recognized the government of Syria and Ahmed al-Shara as president of Syria. The United States is committed to supporting a Syria that is stable, unified, and at peace with itself and its neighbors, a Syria that will not offer a safe haven to terrorist organizations.
So I have a series of questions. I just want to know with a yes or a no. Do you believe in that? I
Yes.
take it as a yes from what
Yeah,
you're
the
saying.
answer is yes.
Yes. Do you agree with the stability is an important factor in ensuring it has a chance to be great?
Stability?
That's a yes or a no.
Yes.
Okay. Do you agree that poverty alleviation and reparation are important to fostering stability and plays an important role for CT functions?
Yes.
Then would you agree that the reckless, rushed, and political motivated shuttering of the USAID was a complete disaster for Syria? Or
No.
do you think there's a strategy there that can help it?
The president showed leadership in lifting the sanctions on Syria to give the Syrian people.
Well, we're specifically looking at USAID.
Yeah, but your question was about the Syrian people. And my answer is that the president, through his courageous step and leadership to recognize the Syrian president and to lift sanctions from the Assad regime, is the greatest thing to give the Syrian people a chance to turn the page. And we are going to continue to support that. We're going to continue to support, through Ambassador Barrack's leadership, ensuring stability and security as well as...
I want to reclaim my time, because what I'm really looking for, because we hear a lot of slogans, I'm hearing a lot of just positions, but I'm really looking for the nooks and the crannies of implementation and how we're going to achieve this goal. I believe that for America to win and to survive and to thrive, that I would love for the administration to be successful, and I really want the State Department to be successful and you to be successful. So I'm asking questions to figure out how we can work together so we can get towards success. So how are we going to fill in the gap with USAID being gutted, and what is your plan and what steps are you taking to alleviate poverty and to fill in that gap specifically?
Well, the department has a plan to deliver development assistance. My role as a counterterrorism coordinator, because these are, I would say, adjacent issues. You're right that conditions can lead to instability and can lead to violence. In my role as coordinator, I'm working with our interagency. We are going to move forward. I'm not in charge of the plans to resume or to refresh our development assistance plans, although I believe that we will move forward with that at some time. I will say that, again, the president's bold leadership to lift sanctions, the Assad-era sanctions, has given the Syrian people a chance. And I would say, I was in Madrid last month with over 30 diplomatic delegations. They were all ecstatic, as well as the UNHCR representative for Syria, who told us that in Damascus, on the day that the president took his decision, there was cheering in the streets. There was ebullient praise and support for the administration's leadership and for the president's leadership.
My time
and
again,
that will allow us, if I may.
I would like to reclaim my time. I want to reclaim my time because we agree with the decision to lift sanctions. That's not up for dispute. But what we're looking at, and I would like to know your opinion based on your years of experience, having a decree or signing a paper or having a treaty or making decisions, these are great things, but there are scaffolding that needs to be on the bottom of that to help hold up and make sure that this agreement or, lifting these sanctions will lead to success in Syria. And like I was saying earlier, that is my goal. And so in your opinion, do you believe that we need more pieces of scaffolding for you to be successful in what you're doing? And what would that look like?
The Bureau of Counterterrorism, with respect to Syria, we have all the resources that we need to advance the president's priorities, to keep America safe and secure, and to advance the president's vision in the Middle East, including to turn the page for the Syrian people and give them another chance.
In February, Mercury Corps warned that it would stop clean water delivery to 1.8 million Syrians. Save the Children was forced to close 20 out of its 50 nutrition programs in Syria, which had left over 400,000 children at risk for severe malnutrition. The reckless funding cuts also impacted democracy and gave governance programs and good governance programs at the time when the support would be crucial to helping the new government succeed. So my question for you is, do you provide input into the closure of USAID and these programs in Syria, specifically with the impacts in development on the ground?
So I understand the question. You're asking me if I had input into that decision?
No, I'm asking you, do you provide any input? As I mentioned earlier, the goal is to see that the scaffolding that you need to be successful in order to support your mission and your agenda. What do you provide input? What would be some of that input? Because as we're looking at proposals or legislation to support you, I would like to know what would be some of your input, being that USAID now has been removed. What is it that you need to be successful in addition to what your department offers?
Well, from the perspective of counterterrorism, we're 100% focused on preventing an ISIS resurgence, working with the Syrian government to make sure that doesn't happen, and then ensuring that the Syrian government has what it needs in order to confront that threat. That's the counterterrorism role that we fulfill. The broader picture here is that I think we share this goal, and we probably share the same vision that the Syrian people have the opportunities to move forward, and the Syrian people have the resources they need to live prosperous lives. And the lifting of the sanctions, and then of course the lifting of the designations of HTS as a foreign terror organization will enable greater investment in Syria. The Caesar Act pausing the Caesar Act will enable investment, will enable support from all over the world, including from the region, to ensure that we can, as you say, give some scaffolding or give some life, give some legs to the president's courageous and strong decision to lift sanctions.
Thank you. I yield back.
I want to thank the ranking member. I would note, obviously, this is a big discussion that is going on in Congress with respect to Syria. We want them to be able to succeed. We want stability in Syria. And ultimately, we want the administration to have the tools necessary to address the situation on the ground, to lift the sanctions as appropriate, but to not necessarily end all accountability measures as this new government forms. So, this is a debate that we had on the Financial Services Committee yesterday in large measure, and some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle wanted all sanctions lifted immediately. So this is a debate that will continue, obviously. I now want to recognize the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Representative Mast of Florida, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Lawler. How are you doing today?
Chairman, it's an honor to see you.
Nice to see you as well. I want to get into the FY26 budget requests, and something specifically I want to ask. It includes $215 million for anti-terrorism assistance, $45 million for the terrorist interdiction program, the PISA system. And I just want you to walk us through, if you can, how the Bureau is ensuring that these funds deliver the measurable security benefits to the American people that are needed. Let's just start with that.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you for your interest and for your support. These funds, we have gone through both through our annual review in the Counterterrorism Bureau to make sure that the resources that we're allocated match up to strategic priorities, through the broader assistance review that the administration had following the election, following January 20th, and then, of course, looking at the world as it is, a major focus that we have, three geographic areas: Central Asia, because of ISIS Khorasan; the Middle East, because of Iran and its proxies; and then West Africa, because of the incidence of terrorist attacks in the Sahel. And those three areas geographically are the areas where we're allocating the bulk of our ATA assistance. But we also do have some other partners, such as the Philippines and elsewhere, that are facing their own threats and also happen to be in areas
Let's
of
touch on the
strategic
partners a minute. All right, so if you're looking at the NATO, the foreign partners and how they're prioritized for the NATO programming, how do you determine which foreign partners are prioritized?
Well, first of all, it comes down to whether there's a threat to the United States from terrorist groups or terrorist activity in a given area or a given country. And then we, of course, measure up with the partner. We have, on a bilateral or a macro level, of course, we have to be able to work with a given government in a way that's accountable. And then we have vetting processes that, with respect to the implementer level, to make sure that what we're going to get is again something that will keep America safe and secure.
Outcomes are obviously something that we want to be measurable and that, guide the direction there, but maybe go a little bit more into, the security needs, the diplomatic factors, capacity to absorb assistance. Go into that a little bit if you can.
Sure, I'll give an example. ISIS Khorasan is a serious threat to not just the United States, but our partners in Central Asia and across Europe. Our partnership with Pakistan has yielded results. They returned the Abbey Gate bomber. They are partnering with us to confront ISIS Khorasan. And we do have, of course, some assistance from the CT Bureau, Counterterrorism Bureau, that fits into that broader strategy. That's one example. The coastal states the littoral states in Africa, Togo, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, north of those countries and in the northern parts of those countries, they are facing attacks or they are facing ISIS activity that is killing civilians on a very frequent basis. We've started programs there over the past few years. These are, I would say the total outlay of those in those three countries is probably under $20 million a year. So I think we get a lot of mileage per dollar out of these programs, and we're able to ensure that ISIS and JNIM, which is an Al-Qaeda affiliate, does not have the capacity to establish a safe haven in that part of the world.
So let's go into a little bit more into the where the resources are going. So for the Bureau's process, how do you determine which continents or regions, balancing the balance between going to sub-Saharan Africa or Central Asia? How do you conduct that balance?
Well, it's an interagency process. We work with the intelligence community. We work with our partners across the interagency, DoD, because they've got their own footprint in several of these countries. And we look at the cable reporting over the year from our embassies. And again, we do this in September as a general matter, but we can do it on an ad hoc basis if there's a particular event or a development. And through that process, we then, of course, all of this relates back to what the administration, the President Trump's priorities are, which is to keep America safe and secure. So we're really focused on, do these groups or do these terrorist actors pose a direct threat to the homeland or a potential threat, and that we have to stay on top of. And so the outcomes there, where we come out, big focus on Central Asia. We've done more with Tajikistan, a country that borders China, Russia, and Afghanistan. So we've built some border security partnerships there. That's an example in Central Asia, of course, with Iran and its proxies. By the way, with Iran and its proxies, we had a delegation from my bureau in South America just a couple months ago, because the impact or the influence of Hamas, Hezbollah, the IRGC in South America has been pretty pernicious, and I would say, and one of our diplomatic results I was mentioning earlier, Paraguay designated the IRGC as a terrorist organization. All of this is underpinned by our diplomacy, and also, I believe, our assistance on security, our counterterrorism assistance with these partners.
So with CT assistance, let's talk about that. My time has expired, but I'm going to ask another question anyway. So tell me how CT leverages programmatic funding to encourage counterterrorism burden sharing and the broader foreign policy alignment.
I'll give you a great example. Northeast Syria, camps, displaced persons camps of family members of ISIS fighters. 3 years ago, the population was roughly 70,000. We have worked very hard, it's Counterterrorism Bureau in the lead, in the diplomacy of helping to repatriate, make sure that, as General Kurilla said, these camps pose a serious long-term threat of violent extremism because the women, the children in these camps, as they grow up, the risk of them being radicalized is very high. So we've taken steps to help them to be repatriated to Iraq, now within Syria, now that the Assad regime has fallen, and to Central Asia and other countries. The population of that camp, of those camps, is now about 30,000. We, the United States, in all of this, have outlaid about 85% of the costs of maintaining and operating those camps through an implementing partner. However, with the fall of Assad and with the new administration, we've been able to move forward with getting the United Nations to take its proper responsibility to move forward and take ownership or facilitate these camps. The cost will be much less, and I also have been engaging with our partners in France and Germany, the United Kingdom, on burden sharing, and I pointed out we've paid 85% of the cost so far. This threat is actually proximate to you relative to us, and we've gotten some good feedback here because we make, under the president's leadership, we say if we share risk, we have to share burden. And that's an example where I think we're making a lot of improvement.
Very good. I appreciate the answer to all of my questions today. And in that, Mr. Lawler, I can't yield you back any time. I have none remaining.
No, we were in our second round of questioning, so you had upwards of 10 minutes. So I appreciate the chairman participating in this hearing, and I want to thank the witness for the valuable testimony and the members for their questions. The members of the subcommittee may have some additional questions for the witness, and we will ask you to respond to these in writing. Pursuant to committee rules, all members may have 5 days to submit statements, questions, and extraneous materials for the record, subject to the length limitations. Without objection, the committee stands adjourned.